Shabbat Shalom. This week's parasha, Parshat Matot Masei, introduces us to the world of vows and oaths. We are told in the Torah that if a person takes an oath, it is his vow, his word is his bond. You cannot, lo yachel dvaro, it says, do not let your words become profaned. It is a very powerful insight about the importance and holiness of our words. And we've discussed this on previous occasions. What I would like to use today is ask the question, why was it so important in this particular Shabbat, the second Shabbat of the 3 weeks, that we read about this rule about matot and about our vows? We might say it as follows, that it tells us the importance of our vows and our promises. But the Torah in this discussion about our Parsha this week introduces us a very interesting rule. It says, what happens if a person makes a vow and realizes that this was not something that they really had thought through? They had made a promise, but now they're regretting their promise. The law is that what could come before a judge or between a basin of three and annul their vows. You may be familiar with this tradition on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, or in Yom Kippur itself, when we read the words Kol Nidre, let all our vows become null and void. Why was it so important that we read about this particular concept now in these weeks leading up between 17th of Tammuz and Tisha Bav? I believe the insight that the Torah wishes to give us is a very simple one, a very powerful one. We are told that the reason for the destruction of the second temple was a sin called Sinat Chinam, which was a hatred of others for no apparent reason. A lot of times, hatred is caused, or feelings of hatred towards the other is caused because of something that you've been told about them, which which might not necessarily be true. You may have people may not like you because someone has passed a comment about you, and now no one wants to talk to you because you have been tarnished. What do you do then? How many times have we had what is known as the family arguments, where one sibling doesn't talk to another, where one friend doesn't talk to another, because they have made an oath, I will never speak to this person again. And then with time, we calm down and we say to ourselves, this is really not what I wanted. I really still want to have a relationship with this person. But what can I do? I've made an oath that I will never speak to them again. Our Torah tells us you are allowed, there's a vehicle called Hatarat Nidarim, that you're allowed to annul the vow, have it cancelled, have it unwound from you, and then you can rebuild the relationship. And I think this is a very powerful lesson as we're leading through these 3 weeks. Think about the relationships. Was there a legitimate reason for you to have that fight with that person? Is that caused this sinah, this hatred, and this breakdown of relationships? And maybe it was then, but sometimes not now. They tell a famous story about a rabbi who was confronted with the following scene at a funeral. A father died, and his 4 sons each arrived independently to come to the rabbi. And they said to the rabbi, Rabbi, our father has died, and here is my list of the people I wish to have as pallbearers at my father's funeral. Each brother had walked in separately, and each brother had given him a separate list. And the rabbi says to the brothers, what's going on over here? They said, we had a fight, and we don't talk to each other. And for the last 25 years, we have not spoken to each other because of that fight. And we have nothing to do with it. My kids don't know his kids. We have nothing to do with that side of the family. So the rabbi thought and said, okay, there's only one way to resolve this. He calls a meeting of all 4 brothers, puts into his office. They all arrive at the same time. They are very nervous because they have not been in the same room for over 20 years. The rabbi looks at them and says, here are the 4 lists of pallbearers. I'm not prepared to have an absolute shlomazel, a mess up at your father's funeral. It is not an honor and respect for him. Come up with one list. And with that, he closes the door. After about 20 minutes, he hears sobbing. He opens the door to find all 4 brothers are crying. And he says, what's going on over here? And one of the brothers sheepishly responds, this is the first time in 20 years that we've actually been in a room together and spoken to each other. The rabbi said, fantastic. So what are you crying about? He says, we are crying because not one of us can remember what the reason was that caused us to break our communications. Is that not a case of Sinat Chinam, of a hatred for another where there's no reason that you can even think of? In the lead up to Tisha Bav, let us think about how we relate to one another. Let us use the Parsha of Matot to reflect upon this question. If I've made a commitment that I will never speak to another person, but I actually don't know what that was or why it was, maybe it's time to do a hatarat nedarim, to annul that vow and to be able to restore that relationship. Our rabbis tell us that in any generation that the temple is not built, it means that the sin is still there. Let us use this Shabbat to inspire our relationships and try and repair what has been broken. Shabbat Shalom.